Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Singapore International Cyber Week 2024. My name is Wayne Chan, and it's my pleasure to be your host this afternoon. And of course, welcome to the high-level panel tech event on trust and security in the quantum era. Now, we have an exciting lineup of international and local panelists here with us today, and we encourage our audience to pose questions for our panelists through Slido. Please scan the QR code displayed on the screen. Now, the emergence of quantum computing introduces significant security threats that could undermine modern cryptographic foundations, necessitating a re-examination of the way digital trust and security have been built ahead of the quantum era. Now, this panel aims to navigate the evolving landscape of digital security in the quantum era. It facilitates dialogue on the impact of quantum computing on trust and security, whilst exploring quantum-safe solutions to mitigate emerging threats. Now, to address these complex issues, we have divided our discussions into two panels. The first panel, Securing Trust Amidst Quantum Risk, will delve into the current state and its impact on digital security and trust. After a short coffee break, we will resume the discussions on the second panel, Key Changes for Quantum Safety. This panel will explore quantum-safe solutions designed to mitigate quantum threats and establish assurance in these new solutions. Now, to open the event, we are pleased to have Mr. Quek Kim Pugh with us today. Now, Mr. Quek Kim Pugh is the Senior R&D Consultant of the Singapore Ministry of Defence. He also co-chairs the National Quantum Strategy Steering Committee. He was also the Chief Defence Scientist of MINDEF from 2016 to 2021, and the Chief Executive Officer of DSO National Laboratories from 2004 to 2016. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming for the opening address, Mr. Quek Kim Pugh.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and to our foreign friends who are here, welcome to sunny Singapore. I trust you have a full and productive program so far at SICW and ready for the next deep dive into how quantum technology is affecting security and trust. Quantum computing technology has been developing rapidly over the past few years, and its potential to break commonly used cryptography and encryption algorithms has created much anxiety and uncertainties for government, industry, and consumers on the future of trust and security. It starts timely for SICW to address this important question. I believe the two panelists this afternoon will go some way to address some of this anxiety and uncertainties. And I also hope that you will get a better appreciation of the issues, the challenges, and understanding of both the reality and the myth in this rather esoteric technology called quantum. But first, some quick background. The notion of a quantum computer is not new. Paul Benoit and Richard Feynman in the 80s spoke about a quantum mechanical model of a computer that could solve problems that classical computer could not. But it was not until 1994 when Peter Shaw, then a researcher at AT&T Bell Labs, discovered an algorithm that enabled quantum computers to factorize large numbers much faster than existing algorithms could on classical computer. It was then that many researchers started to pay attention to the power of quantum computers. This is because the discovery showed that quantum computer, if realized, could break common cryptographic systems such as the widely used public key RSA. The discovery by Shaw spurred an acceleration in quantum computer investment and research around the world. Over the past few years, countries such as the US, UK, France, Germany, China, Australia, and Japan had announced multi-billion-dollar investment to develop quantum computer. Major companies such as IBM and Google have invested heavily into fault-tolerant quantum computer. Quantum computing startups such as IonQ, Qujera, Quantinuum, Pascal, PsiQuantum have also emerged, offering their own quantum computing solutions. Research into cryptographic techniques that are resistant to Shaw algorithms and other quantum algorithms have also made significant progress. In August this year, the US National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, released the first 3 finalized post-quantum encryption standards that are designed to withstand the attack of a quantum computer. Allow me next to provide some background on what Singapore has been doing in the quantum scene. Singapore is not a newcomer to quantum technologies. Some 20 years back, the government had the foresight to establish CQT, or the Center for Quantum Technologies, to do basic research in quantum physics and build devices based on quantum phenomena. CQT has since grown into one of the leading quantum institutes globally. Today, the government continues to invest in quantum technologies. Earlier this year, the National Research Foundation, or NRF, launched the National Quantum Strategy. Announced by DPM Heng in May, this strategy highlights the Singapore government commitments to invest 300 million into quantum over the next 5 years. The NQS comprises of 4 strategic thrusts: research, engineering, innovation and enterprise, as well as talent development. These are guided by 5 national-level programs: the National Quantum Safe Network Program, National Quantum Computing Hub Program, National Quantum Sensor Program, National Quantum Processor Initiative, and a National Quantum Federated Foundry Program. Through these trusts and national programs, NQS aims to strengthen Singapore's position as the leading hub in the development and deployment of quantum technologies. A National Quantum Office is set up to drive this. Coming back to the theme on security, the founding directors of CQT, Professor Arthur Eckert, is a pioneer in the field of quantum secure communication. The well-known Eckert 91 protocol, which utilizes ideas in quantum entanglement to secure communication, is named after him. The center has also spun off several startups, including Spectra, a company that develops quantum-safe communication networks through an integration of space-based transmission and terrestrial fiber optics link, as well as S15 Instruments, which specializes in photonics quantum technologies for secure comms. Over the years, CQT has also built up research capability in PQC. In fact, a CQT proposal for PQC protocol was accepted into the first round of search by NIST. Building on more than 10 years of research in CQT, the National Quantum Safe Network was set up in 2022 to conduct nationwide trials of quantum safe communication to enhance network security. NQSN brought together researchers from the universities and end users from government agencies and more than 15 companies, including AWS, NetLink Trust, and ST Telemedia. Together, they demonstrated the feasibility of deploying QKD to protect against quantum computing risks. Following the successful NQN test-bed trials, IMDA launched the NQSN Plus last year. NQSN Plus will support network operators to deploy quantum-safe network nationwide, providing businesses easy access to quantum-safe solutions such as QKD and PQC. The NQSN will be repurposed and repositioned as the NQSN test bed, With new equipment and facilities, it will support research into quantum internet as well as quantum-based satellite communication. The NQSN testbed will continue to be made available to companies who are keen to test quantum-safe solutions in a realistic environment. Let me touch briefly on the challenges in deploying quantum-safe solutions in operational systems. While QKD offers a quantum-safe security, there exist gaps in security testing, evaluation, and certification of QKD systems and network. This is a critical unsolved problem because while QKD is theoretically secure, practical implementations of QKD systems may still be vulnerable to attacks if not properly tested and evaluated. Today, many QKD systems are deployed with limited testing and without standardization framework. Also, current QKD solutions are often evaluated based on proprietary methods, which limits the transparency of their security guarantees. There's thus an urgent need to develop vendor-neutral, internationally recognized testing and certification methods that ensures that QKD devices are rigorously evaluated and certified before deployment. PQC aims to develop new crypto standards that are resistant to attack from quantum computer. While there's always the lingering questions of whether the algorithms chosen to implement PQC are indeed resistant against quantum computer, a more mundane challenge lies in the migrations of existing infrastructure to these new crypto schemes without disrupting the current system. There are also challenges to maintain interoperability between different systems during this transition period. For example, between complex infrastructures such as the 5G, 6G networks, and critical industrial systems. These are challenges that Singapore is also starting to grapple with. I believe that this will also be discussed during the panel later, and I'll look forward to learning from the panelists. Before I conclude, I'd like to highlight the importance of international partnership. International partnership is a key tenet of our national quantum strategy. The challenges I mentioned earlier, for example, are just too big for Singapore or, for the matter, any single countries to address. Many quantum activities in our research ecosystem are thus carried out with various international partners. I will list a few examples in the quantum security domain. Singapore actively participates in the international standardization efforts. As an example, we co-chair the Joint Coordination Activity on QKD Network, or JCA-QKDN, under ITU. CQT also works closely with the Fraunhofer Singapore to develop a better understanding of how QKD and PQC perform in the practical testing, collaborating on areas such as side channel analysis, network resilience, and readiness. Spectra, a local startup, collaborates with RAL Space, the space hub for UK research and innovation, to develop, launch, and operate Spectre, a CubeSat with QKD technology to test secure distribution of crypto keys from space to ground. Notwithstanding the intensifying global tech contestation, Singapore remains committed to grow international partnership in this critical domain in quantum. The presence of many overseas delegates here today is a strong endorsement of the need and importance for international partnership. So in closing, I look forward to an engaging and productive discussion on how we navigate the evolving landscapes of digital security in the quantum era. Let me wish everyone an enjoyable, productive day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quek, for your insightful sharing. And of course, a reminder to our audience as well that you can pose questions for our panelists through Slido throughout the panel discussions. You may scan the QR code displayed on the screen. And now, let us invite our panelists for the first panel, Securing Trust Amidst Quantum Risk, to take their seat on stage. Now, our moderator for this afternoon is Dr. Vikram Sharma, CEO and founder, Quintessence Labs. And joining him on stage are our panelists, Mr. Chong Rong Hua, Senior Director, Cybersecurity Group, GovTech. Dr. Matt Henriksen, Principal Engineer, Huawei. Prof. Ronald Kramer, Head of the Cryptology Group, CWI. And Mr. Alexei Brochanikov, Asia Pacific Regional Leader for Quantum Security, Accenture. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us. And without further ado, over to you, Dr. Vikram Sharma.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Quek, for so eloquently framing the discussions that we're going to have here this afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first of two high-level panels exploring trust and cybersecurity in the quantum era. In their plenary remarks, Senior Minister Teo, Minister Josephine Teo, and Chief Executive David Koh each highlighted the criticality of cyber preparedness against a quantum-enabled adversary. Presciently, Singapore policymakers and government leaders have prioritized this effort, and indeed today we see that Singapore is positioned as a leader that's on the forefront of this technology worldwide. And indeed, I think we'll progressively, over the near to medium term, see some significant developments in quantum preparedness develop here in Singapore. So I'd like to also extend my thanks to the CSA for convening us for this fantastic forum. Certainly SICW has developed into one of the region's most well-recognized cyber events. And it's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be with you here today. My name is Vikram Sharma. I'm the founder and CEO of Quintessence Labs, and I have the great pleasure and honor of being joined by a distinguished panel of experts here to debate this topic. They'll each introduce themselves shortly. The format of the panel will basically be that they'll have 3 minutes each to give you a bit of background on themselves and what they're doing, followed by about 25 minutes for a panel discussion, which will then leave us a few minutes for your Q&A at the end. And indeed, if we do run out of time during the Q&A session, there will be the coffee break that follows immediately after this session, and you'll be most welcome to approach any one of us and continue any discussions or questions that we may not have been able to get to. By way of a quick introduction, my company, Quintessence Labs, is at the intersection of quantum and cybersecurity. We leverage effects in the quantum world to secure, robustly secure, sensitive data against a quantum-enabled adversary. Our products and solutions are capabilities to enable security for infrastructure as well as applications. And today, we are deployed in about a dozen Fortune 500 and equivalent companies across 20 countries. So I would now like to turn to my colleagues and hand over to give you a short overview of themselves and what they're doing. And Ronghua, if I could ask you to kick us off and then progressively move to the right there.
Yes, please, Vikram. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ronghua, and I'm currently part of GovTech. I focuses on leading the cyber engineering team that focus on securing systems through simplifying securities as well as exploiting technologies. On top of that, we also do testing of systems to enhance protection and detection. And as part of that portfolio, I have a piece that scans the technologies to prepare us for the future. So that, as an end user organization, we are better informed, more aware, and get ready for the new technologies that may come along the way. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Matt Henriksen. I work for Huawei, a multinational company. Huawei has a research office in Singapore, and the group I'm involved in has been working in post-quantum migration for about 5 years. As you can imagine, Huawei has many product lines that use cryptology extensively. So we wanted to conduct a key task of working out inventory to see which cryptographic algorithms would be very vulnerable to oncoming quantum computer. So once we had the cryptographic inventory worked out, we can categorize the cases according to those that need to be addressed immediately. For example, if we make a hardware device now and the lifetime of that hardware device is 20 years, we can't go putting legacy algorithms into it now. We need to act when we produce it. And we also can categorize some of the cases as where there's not such an urgent need to act now, but we can do some research, for example, how to modify protocols to deal with the different types of algorithms that we are using, because these algorithms have many different parameters than the legacy algorithms that we are used to. So this is one of the constructive uses of my time in the past 5 years. But as a cryptographic engineer, I have a particular passion for optimization and implementation. So one of the things I was deeply involved with was implementing these post-quantum algorithms and inserting them into protocols like TLS to see what kind of impact on performance they have. And we found actually the new algorithms are quite suitable for old protocols. And then the third aspect, Huawei likes to talk with friends to exchange opinions. So I was heavily involved in communicating with our partners, two-way communication to work out best strategies for post-quantum migration. Thank you.
Yep. Ronald Kramer. I'm the head and founder of the cryptology group at CWI in Amsterdam. CWI is the Dutch National Research Institute for Computer Science and for Mathematics and Computer Science. And I'm a professor of mathematics at Leiden University. The cryptology group in Amsterdam addresses fundamental aspects of cryptology, so that can be cryptanalysis, construction of schemes. In fact, people in my group are centrally working and involved in new standards, including Kyber and dilithium and some others too. So we also work on other things than just encryption, secure multi-party computation, for instance. But in addition to the fundamental research and work on standards, in the Netherlands we collaborate and have advisory roles for the government to help prepare for the transition to new cryptography standards. This process, the Netherlands has taken a start last year from the government in an organization that is called Quantum Safe Government. And that is a cross-section of all the ministries, and it also includes other stakeholders like the NLNCSA and others. In collaboration also with knowledge institutes, including us, awareness programs are made and plans are drawn to prepare government and industry, government at large, not only the national government, but also local government and industry, to prepare them for transition to the new standards. And increasingly, this is becoming a European effort, because the EU is now starting to prepare a roadmap for transition to new standards. This is pursuant to the NIS2 regulations by the EU, the Network and Information Security Standards regulation. And this process is chaired by the Netherlands, France, and Germany. And next year, the first results will be made public.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alexei.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexei Bacharnikov. I'm leading quantum security group in Accenture in the Asia-Pacific region. My group is working primarily on two areas. One is helping clients to understand what is the problem, or how we usually refer to it, what is the risk, quantify it, figure out where does it reside, and how much will it cost to remediate that problem, and how to make environments quantum safe, what are the solutions, approaches, is it the software implementation, library change, procedural change, work with the vendor. Accenture, I'd like to say a few words about Accenture for those who don't know what this company is doing, is a professional services firm with a clear motto that we just don't do presentations, we implement things and solve problems. And I'd like to believe that my presence and Accenture support on this panel comes from the hard work that Accenture put into place to develop emerging technology capabilities. In fact, we have 3 stages in the company that every idea come through, and they are lab, growth, and production. Quantum security is the perfect example. Recently, it was in the lab, and this problem that we discussed today is not a new problem. It was known for decades. Once Shor published his idea about the algorithm, it sparked the idea that sometime when quantum computers become a reality, there might be a problem. Because this is a very niche field, it requires some time to develop capabilities, to know what you do, to have knowledge, partnership skills. And we've been doing that in Accenture with quantum security for years. And now, because all the attention from the governments across the globe, from the industries, it moved from the lab stage to the growth stage. I'm happy to be on the panel, and I hope to share some interesting views with you. Vikram, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alexei. I do recall you telling me that at Accenture, your motto is very much about delivery, not so much about perhaps hypothesizing about. So very much look forward to hearing of some of your experiences from delivery. So thank you, colleagues, for those opening intros. Let's start by exploring whether the quantum threat is in some ways similar to threats that we may have previously seen, or is it, by definition, something that's fundamentally different? So Alexei, actually, I might kick off with you and ask, well, what can we learn from the way we've handled cyber threats in the past to guide development of resilient, quantum resilient strategy today? Are there some learnings?
I've been thinking about this question for quite some time, and I think the way how question is phrased implies that there are similarities, and we can apply same thinking, same approaches to another threat, which now we call quantum security. Maybe it is the case, maybe there are a lot of similarities, but I'd like to highlight two important differences that I realized over the time. Why is it different? And those are the following. In the case of the normal cybersecurity incident that everyone is used to, being that ransomware or attack on your infrastructure, everyone implies that once you found that problem, once you identified the threat, you can do something to stop it. Being that to implement a new solution, configure your network, you can somehow contaminate it. Unfortunately, this assumption doesn't work with the quantum security risk. Everyone heard about the harvest now, decrypt later problem, and it's obvious once you lost your data, you're no longer in the control of the data, and if at some point in the future it gets exposed, you cannot roll back and protect it. So this assumption that I can stop the problem when it hits is not working with quantum security, and in order to remediate the problem, actions should be taken early. And the second thing that I find different with this exact threat is the scale. You can pick any example, any threat you recently heard about. It will be located in some specific technology stack related to some equipment or to some applications. It never goes through all your environment. Quantum security is a fancy word of saying cryptography, in fact. And when we speak about quantum security risk, what we mean is that there are some problems that needs to be fixed with cryptography. There are no one tool that you use in your environment that does not use cryptography. If you can name one, I'll be glad to have it, because I don't know anyone. People sometimes come with old names, systems that are no longer in use, but let's focus only on the modern technology solutions. So you use cryptography everywhere, and now you want to change it. Somehow you want to update it. And the scale is immense. So no other security problem is that big. And that changes a lot of things, from the planning, how much it takes for a given organization to plan the resolution, and to budgeting how much will it cost. So just to recap, you cannot stop it once it's started unless you did things before, and the scale is different compared to any other threats that we've faced.
Thanks, Alexei. And indeed, I guess building on that, there is this term that's been floated around called Q-Day, so-called the day where we will face a quantum-enabled adversary who will be able to in some way compromise exactly the cryptographic systems that you've been talking about. Of course, there's quite some uncertainty around that because there are significant engineering and scientific challenges that need to be overcome to achieve a quantum computer at the scale, as Mr. Quek mentioned in the opening, that will affect impact cybersecurity today. So Ronghua, if I may turn to you and ask, given this uncertainty around, and perhaps bearing in mind the Harvest Now, Decrypt Later that Alexei mentioned, how do you see the engagement with stakeholders playing out?
Yeah, thanks very much, Vikram. Absolutely. I think the uncertainty of Q-Day does affect the level of engagement with our stakeholders. I think at the end of the day, it still depends on the awareness, openness, and risk appetites of the stakeholders, whether or not are they receptive to some of these new ideas. But I think at our end, definitely we can do something about it for being more prepared before we actually engage those stakeholders. Take, for example, like what we are doing right now is because the projection of the Q-Day actually is pretty unknown, we actually have some kind of a rough projection estimations using, for example, like RSA2048 as a baseline, and to see how many logical qubits that requires to break it, and correspondingly how many physical qubits that's required for this support. We roughly estimate it to be around like 2035 kind of a timeline. But I think anything may change along the way, but having some kind of date as an estimation would definitely help as part of the engagement process to help them see the urgency that we need to start now than later. On top of that, we also share a little bit on what are some of our plans before we actually engage them, right? In order for us to be a little bit more concrete, right? I think more importantly, as an end user organizations, we do need to know what exactly are our assets. And with that list of assets and perhaps types of systems, we need to know what to prioritize and also share what exactly is our approach. And last but not least, we do have to leave some room for changes that may come along the way, especially in this very emerging field. To be honest, I think we have to be very upfront with them that the technology itself perhaps is not fully matured, and we may need to have some kind of layered approach in order to adapt with such a change.
Thank you. Really interesting, and I guess adding to that, Ronghua, is the fact that it takes time to transition. Absolutely. So that to take complex cybersecurity infrastructures across large enterprises and move them to a quantum resilient posture is something that will take a number of years to achieve. So you need to set a date where the risk might reach a threshold and work back from there, depending on how long it takes you to transition. Ronald, did you want to add something there? No? Okay, I'll come on to you. So I guess now turning to build on that, the level of awareness around the quantum threat, both regionally and globally. So Ronald, you've been quite involved in efforts, as you mentioned in the opening, in the Netherlands and more broadly across the EU. So may I ask you, what are some of the initiatives that you have seen in engaging stakeholders to help them understand and perhaps develop plans to deal with the quantum threat?
Yes. Now, well, from the scientific community internationally, I would say, we've seen for the last decade or 15 years many symposia and workshops, etc., trying to create awareness not only within the scientific community but also outside, government, industry, etc., that quantum threat exists for cryptography as it was used up to that point, at least the public key cryptography. And at least in the Netherlands, it was 4 years ago, during the first COVID year. Maybe we were just, maybe we didn't have much to do, and we suddenly had a good plan to do something with our time. Now, in fact, what we observed in the Netherlands, in my group, together with TNO, TNO is the Netherlands Organization for Applied Scientific Research, and we have a very strong strategic collaboration with them on this topic and several others as well. We figured that by now it's enough to have scientists, just scientists, create awareness. Look, something might happen. New standards may be coming. At some point, the standards were coming at that point. NIST had its call in 2016. We knew they were coming at some point, but there has to be a point where you have to go awareness 2.0. Yeah, you have to create perspective for people. What actions do they take? Should they take? How should they organize themselves? And so we started doing a program that was actually commissioned by the Ministry of the Interior in the Netherlands, which we call PQC, Migration Handbook, to create a perspective for organizations. And of course, this perspective may differ per organization. So it's all from the vision of organizations having different personas. And the first step in the book is also for an organization to figure out what persona are they. Yeah, and depending on it, could be an early adopter, that is a typical persona, or a standard adopter, and there's a whole variety of these things. And so it was 2 years ago, it was last year that we published the first book. So this is not a recipe that everybody can just follow and everything will be fine. It gives guidance. Nobody has done the scale of this kind of transition. As some of my colleagues here on the panel have already pointed out, this is massive. A lot of things have yet to be invented, both on the process side and also on the technical side. And I don't mean necessarily the cryptography, but also inventory tooling. Yeah? So how do you figure out what to change in a system? What do you have in a system? Many people don't even know. You know, the systems have been patched together over the years, for instance, etc. So we've been working on that, published the book last year, and this year the Ministry of the Interior commissioned an extension, so book 2.0, scheduled to be released at the end of the year. And it's also available in English. In any case, and another thing that we did together with TNO, CWI and TNO, and now also together with the Ministry of the Interior, is create a symposium series on post-quantum crypto migration. And in December we're having the 7th. And the primary aim was to create a national local community around this topic. Policymakers, government, industry people, not a scientific conference or a conference where you go to have a nice free champagne at the end of the day, although we serve it. But yeah, so just focused on exactly the people in the various organizations that have PQC migration on their plate. Yeah, it's their responsibility, or they're the expert, etc. So, and I think we have created a community now. At least, I think around 500 experts have already visited at least once. And plans are to take this international. And these are the examples. Of course, the government in the Netherlands has undertaken other efforts to inform the government, sections of the government, but also the public, yeah, obviously. But jointly with government, we have made these sort of bigger pushes through the Migration Handbook and through the Symposium series. And I must also say that in France and in Germany, through the regulators BSI and ANSI, the public has been informed already for years with advisories, with technical documentation, with YouTube videos, etc. And there's a close collaboration among the Dutch, the French, and the Germans. And on the governance level, as I said in my opening statement, France, Germany, and the Netherlands jointly chair the European roadmap for post-quantum crypto migration.
And Ronald, I think even World Economic Forum has been doing some interesting work in this and putting out a handbook towards quantum resilience, I think very much in the vein of what you've developed in the Netherlands. So perhaps now sort of looking at, Matt, I'll turn to you, and with Huawei, I guess you have visibility very broadly of cybersecurity threats across the world. And if you look at most cyber organizations, they're being hammered left, right, and center by all kinds of disparate attack vectors that they're seeing. How do you think we go about prioritizing migration to quantum resilience in the midst of this rather complex and arena where resources are often very stretched?
The scale of this threat drives how we should prioritize it. This threat is different than previous cryptographic threats in a number of ways. First of all, the generality. So you can imagine that a few companies that have implemented a cryptographic module, and maybe there was some obscure bug in the modular exponentiation that allowed attackers to break that module. So you can patch it and fix it, but it doesn't work here. The algorithms, no matter what you do, no matter how you implement them, you can't use them anymore because they are vulnerable. And in the past, we are used to changing cryptography. For example, we use RSA 1024, and then as computing power gets better, we find that 1024 is not enough. So we upgrade to RSA 2048. Again, this strategy won't work because when you run Shor's algorithm on any kind of RSA key, it will be broken within a matter of hours or day. And then, as Alexei referred to before, the harvest now and decode later. It doesn't seem to have any kind of analog I'm aware of. So maybe for the past 5 years or the past 10 years, some actors have been harvesting all of the information that they find on the internet, and there's nothing they can do with it now, but they store it and they keep it until they have a quantum computer, and then suddenly they find they have a treasure trove. So perhaps the victim isn't even aware that his messages have been decrypted. So what this means is that the precedence is very, very high, and I don't think it's directly comparable to other kinds of cybersecurity threats because of the difference in its very nature.
Interesting. So I guess it's the economic impact and potential loss of value that occurs that you think might help in prioritization?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, that leads very neatly to our next approach, and perhaps looking at some of the approaches that have been taken around the world to motivate the migration to PQC. Alexei, if I may turn to you, is regulation inevitable?
I'd like to bring perspective about regulations that is not commonly expected as an answer to this question. So obviously, different nations respond with different level of regulations across the world. But I'd like to speak about regulations as the ultimate form of prioritization. If you take any one organization, I worked in the multinational bank before I joined Accenture. If you wanted to solve any one problem, obviously you need budget, you need money to do that. There were two magic words, two spells we used. And those spells were, this is the regulatory requirement, and this is the audit issue. So once you can attach your need to one of those, you could get money to fix things. Why is that? It's because everyone operates in a world where there are so many issues. We have constrained resources, and we need to prioritize what we do. And it works at any level, including cybersecurity. You have a lot of wishes, you have a lot of things you want to do to make your environment safe, but you have that much resources. And I believe once governments steps in with the regulation, it gives the leverage to all the institutions to prioritize things that are most important. So there is no way you can avoid regulation. And that's why that's the ultimate prioritization tool that governments can use across the globe, including Singapore, to help companies. Someone can say force, but I see it more like help, because the understanding of the problem is there. It's just hard to convince, hard to prioritize, hard to choose among other things that you need to do what is most important. Regulation helps with that.
Thanks, Alexei. Certainly, I think in Singapore, touching on the points you were just making there, I think regulation has been introduced around banks and requiring them to develop a very clear strategy towards quantum resilience. Ronghua, if I could turn to you, do you think that quantum resilient cryptography will become the norm? And if so, will we see quantum vulnerable technologies basically become obsolete?
Right. Definitely, I think in my point of view, short answer, yes. Eventually, it will become a norm, and we have learned this from the past that, like for example, triple DES, eventually move on to AES and so on and so forth. I think it will be one of them that will become a norm. However, we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we have a huge variety of part of a technological stack. Right, all the way from a very low level, firmware level, even like application level, network level, and all various levels, right? And also highly complex environments and systems. So if we were to talk about whether or not will it be completely become obsolete, or I think it's pretty challenging. Yeah, especially for legacy systems. I think what would most people do and helping this to phase out over time is especially with newer systems, right? They'll actually incorporate all those probably quantum-safe algorithms and implementations that helps it, to phase out over time. Yeah.
So we may well see a transition period, and in that transition period, we might see hybrid systems potentially.
Absolutely,
yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, experts suggest that, and as we said in the opening, that moving to a quantum-safe posture is going to be a lengthy and a resource-intensive process, as I think we've collectively been pointing out. Matt, I may ask you, what do you think a timeline to transition would be reasonable?
We have several clues to answer this question, and the first clue is from NSA to its national system security suppliers and their vendors through CSNA, the Commercial National Security Algorithms Suite 2. So although it doesn't apply generally, it still contains useful advice. So to its vendors, it says you must complete all of your migration by 2033. And it distinguishes based on use case. So it considers the most important one to be hardware and software signing. It says by 2025, you must support some quantum-safe algorithms, and you must discontinue the use of legacy algorithms by 2030. It says for operating systems, you should support PQC algorithms by 2027 and discontinue by 2033. And in the least conservative case, it says everything should be done by 2033. So that's one clue. Another clue, you can look at the roadmap that IBM published on its quantum computers. And it says that by 2033, it plans to have a quantum computer with thousands of logical qubits. So far, IBM has been sticking pretty rigorously to its targets in the roadmap. So if it's true by 2033, it can have a quantum computer with thousands of logical qubits, then it can certainly use that computer to break any kind of RSA. I saw some estimates to say that a small to medium business may be able to complete post-quantum migration within 8 years. So if those organizations start today, I think it all dovetails pretty well by 2030 to 2033.
Thank you. Very helpful. And Ron, did you want to add something there? We're just a bit tight, but maybe a quick comment.
Yeah. So this is more still on if more classical cryptography such as RSA will persist, or will it just drop out right now? I don't think so, because there are all kinds of specialized cryptographic applications whose security is not critical in the longer run, and algorithms are deeply embedded into hardware that is expensive or difficult to update. And those will persist until there's really a quantum computer life-size knocking on the door, so to speak, while in the middle of the night, undercover. Yeah. So
thank you.
So I think that
helpful addition there. And in fact, to help organizations assess how ready they are to transition to quantum readiness, there's a work that's been happening worldwide to develop toolkits and various metrics to help decision makers decide on what timelines are appropriate, as well as to start allocating budget in a timely manner. Alexei, how mature do you think some of this work is, and how useful is it?
So first of all, in cybersecurity, we have no lack of different sorts of frameworks. NIST, CIS, ISO. Sometimes it's hard to choose what you want to do, or just follow regulations. It's worth acknowledging that those are big frameworks, they're standards, it requires time for them to adjust. By definition, they will not keep with emerging technologies. Thus, all those frameworks respond to the emerging technology. Usually, and history tells us that we come into the discussion of different sorts of indexes. And now, discuss the Quantum Security Maturity Index, Quantum Readiness Index, or whatever is the right name to call that index. There are a few things that I believe those indexes are helpful with that I'd like to share with you. Number one, I definitely see a problem in communication between people who understand the issue from the technology perspective and the board, who are prioritization body in any given organization. Once you have an index, once you can benchmark yourself, once you can compare yourself with others, it's much easier to speak with the business people we can pinpoint they have 3.5, our score is 2. We need to keep investing because on average industry has much higher score. Also, the fact that we discuss the index indicates that there is lack of standardization. Industry is looking for the advice, what is right to do. That's a hard topic. Index is some sort of a guidance that helps them to understand what they need to do to get to higher maturity. And so I think with the development of those indexes, especially supported by the government, that could be a great boost for the industry to help with the conversations they have with business people and prioritize the right things that should be done first on the journey to become quantum safe.
Thanks, Alexei. Very helpful advice. In the audience, of course, we have a number of representatives here from industry and government. And just very quickly, in the sort of 2 minutes that we have for our panel discussion time, maybe I'll club the question to both Ronald, you, and Ronghua after that. What are guidelines that governments and industry can provide to really accelerate the awareness and then development of plans towards quantum resilience? Ronald, may I ask you very briefly, maybe in 1 minute if possible, to summarize some thoughts there?
Well, first of all, I think we should call for international dialogue on this, on the issues of post-quantum crypto migration, to learn from each other's experiences and also to learn from each other's mistakes. And what is most urgently needed is probably a lot of interaction between industry, governance, and probably also Knowledge Institute to develop the right tools, say for inventory management assessment. This is the first step in the migration to new PQC standards.
Thank you. Helpful, and I'm sure there's much more we can explore, and during the conversations beyond this panel, be very happy to delve into those. Ronghua, last word yours.
Maybe I'll just add some additional points that off my head, which might help in terms of prioritizations. So I think firstly, in terms of like harvest now, decrypt later, definitely is a threat. But if you were to think from an adversarial point of view, it may not necessarily be that easy actually to manifest that kind of threat, because data from across the internet will go through different nodes, and to find a single point that they can actually consolidate and reconstruct all the data is not that easy. And secondly, in terms of like harvesting a huge amount of data and to do a decryption, on top of that, with a complexity of various protocols, they have to actually to reconstruct those protocols and various encryption layers and stuff like that. It is not trivial, right? So that's the first point. And the second point is we also might need to bear in mind that data itself might have some kind of a secrecy lifespan. So let's say if the data secrecy lifespan is, can outlive the ability to harvest and decrypt, then maybe those might be of a lower priority for migration. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. If I could just ask for technical support here, the Slido seems to have logged out here. If one of the technical colleagues could log me back in. But I think certainly we've had a rich discussion here. Hopefully it's provided you with some material and frameworks to start thinking about how the quantum threat may impact your cyber organizations. And secondly, as to how you might start thinking about going about planning or developing a quantum safe strategy. We're seeing a number of organizations around the world that have really begun that process. And while we talked about Q-Day as being a hard date in the sand, the way we think that one should think about it, thank you so much, is in terms of risk. What is the threat that you're willing to tolerate? Because there's no precise date when this will occur, there are a number of reports that you'll find around which list or provide you some guidance as to what the threat of a quantum-enabled adversary will be in 5 to 10 years, 10 to 15 years, and where you see that risk level cross the threshold of tolerance appropriate for your organization, and I think, Ronghua, to your point, appropriate to the type of data that you want to protect, that gives you a date that you should start working back from, and then factor in how long it actually takes to actually transition your systems, which for most large organizations would be 3 to 5 years at least. So I think we've got time for one question. We've run down the clock pretty much. And we have one question here, which is, as quantum computing advances, what steps should organizations take now to prepare for post-quantum cryptography transition? And how do you foresee governments and industries working together to ensure a smooth and secure shift? So I think that's the most popular one that's been upvoted here. Do we have anyone from the panel that'd like to take a lead? Alexei.
I'm happy to take that one. So on the journey, it's important to recognize it will take a decade to complete it. And there are a few steps that every organization could think of. First one is the strategy. Like, that's the paperwork. How do I do? What do I do? What's my state of the art? What's my position about quantum security? What are the applicable regulations? Next step, that's what usually organization is taking into the quantification of the risk. Where do I have that vulnerable cryptography? How many places? Is it vendor dependent? Is it my problem? What should I do with it? So this cryptography discovery piece is something industry never done before. There are tools appearing that can help you with that, but definitely it's worth knowing the scale of the problem before attempting to solve it. Then thirdly, you go into the solution. You make things quantum safe. And there are many, many different things you can do to make your environment quantum safe. You start small. You take a snap at one system that you try to make quantum safe. And then, if test is successful, if the technology that you have chosen works fine for your environment, you start scaling it up. And then keep repeating it again, again, and again, unless you achieve the state where your quantum risk is reduced to the acceptable level.
Thank you. I think basically, perhaps paraphrasing what you're saying, for many organizations around the world, we see they don't even understand what data they hold. So an inventory of your data assets, and particularly the sensitivity levels, is probably the very first step. Understanding that data and its sensitivity levels allows you then to undertake a gap analysis and look at what potentially is vulnerable, and then, as Alexei was saying, develop a remediation strategy for the nearer term, but also one which will get you to a quantum resilient posture. So I think we're pretty much on time. So I know that there are a few more questions that were there on Slido. Apologies that we've not been able to get to all of them, but I would encourage you to please be in touch with your panelists during the coffee break and pick up any additional questions that you may wish to ask. With that, I'll ask you to join me in thanking our panelists here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Your contributions have truly enriched our discussion and provided our audience with a deeper understanding of securing trust amidst quantum risk. We're genuinely thankful for your time, dedication, and the wealth of knowledge you have shared with us. And of course, panelists, you may now take your seats. Now we have prepared some refreshments and coffee in the foyer. We're going to be taking a 30-minute break, and we will commence the second panel at 2:30 p.m. That's 2:30. Coming up next, we have key changes for quantum safety, which aims to examine the necessary actions for quantum readiness and on establishing assurance in quantum safe solutions to spur their adoption. Make sure you're back into your seats on time at 2:30 p.m. or 2:30. We'll see you back here for our next panel at 2:30 p.m. Welcome back. Once again, my name is Wayne Chan, your host for this afternoon, and I'm sure we all had an insightful first panel, and I hope you enjoyed the refreshments as well. Now, if you've just joined us for this panel, a friendly reminder to all guests, please switch your mobile devices to silent mode before the session starts. Now, similar to the first panel, There'll be a Q&A session at the end of the discussion. Please scan the Slido QR code as shown on the screen to submit any questions you may have at any time. Now, before the break, we heard a discussion on the challenges of raising awareness and providing appropriate advisories for quantum-safe solutions. We also heard how governments and industry players can collaborate to further collective efforts to secure trust amidst quantum risks. Our next panel, Key Changes for Quantum Safety, aims to examine the necessary actions for quantum readiness and on establishing assurance in quantum-safe solutions to spur their adoption. To kick things off, we'd like to invite our moderator for this panel, Mr. Gaurav Kirti, Executive Vice President, Ensign Info Security, to share his thoughts.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Panel 2, Key Changes for Quantum Safety. Some cautionary notes. I am not Mr. Quek Gimpu, so I'm not going to be able to give the kind of gravitas of speech that he just delivered. I do have opening remarks, but my opening remarks are just to frame the conversation that we're about to hear. First, a little bit of a self-introduction. So my name is Gaurav Kirti. I'm the Executive Vice President at Ensign Info Security, which is Asia's largest cybersecurity company. As the head of advisory, my main role is to help leaders at the C-suite and the board level navigate digital risks. And obviously, one of the digital risks that many of them come to me with is this quantum thing. And many of them don't quite know how to wrap their head around this quantum thing. Among board members, they talk about it, they share about it, they hear about it, they watch the movies about it. Some of them are not sure whether it's really about multiverses and time travel or whether it's something a little bit more practical. But my job is to help them understand the digital risk that it poses and frame it and think about how to plan ahead. I am not a quantum or a cryptography expert, unlike my panelists. And in some ways, I'm a little bit like the male member of a Women in Cyber panel. I'm not an expert on the problem, nor do I know the solutions, nor do I have first-hand experience. But perhaps I can ask a few intelligent questions and earn my place here. We have an important and timely discussion ahead of us. And I've got just kind of 3 thoughts to frame what we're going to hear about. Time, threats, and tools. First, time. Transitions are not easy. The quantum threat to most is still a very distant concern. We know that the migration will take time and needs to start now, but in some ways, people think we're crying wolf because it's so far away. They haven't seen the impact of it yet. We know that the time and effort required needs us to start moving as early as possible. We've trusted conventional cryptography to ensure our digital world remains safe and secure, but the advent of quantum computing will change all of that. I think what people don't recognize is that quantum computing is not being researched in a silo, in a bubble by itself. It's being accelerated as well with AI. And if you talk to the people who are in quantum research labs, they are using AI the same way all of us are, as a productivity tool. So whatever trajectory we thought quantum computing research was moving on previously, add a couple of degrees to that slope. And that's where we're now seeing quantum computing research move. In some ways, the fact that we are so ahead of the problem is both a good thing and a bad thing. We're like climate change advocates in the early 90s. We all saw the problem coming. We knew that there was a need for a pressing solution, but it took a long time for it to become like today, where sustainability is the corporate agenda, where it is a driving, pressing concern at board members and C-suite level. But I think our job here is to not let our foot off the gas, to continue highlighting the challenges, the need to start early, the need to move, the need to take action. And that's the focus of today's panel. This panel is all about action. How do we begin that migration to quantum-safe solutions? How do we adapt our assets, people, processes, technologies to ensure a secure future? These are big questions, and we'll tackle them together as we try and explore some practical strategies, or at least ask some probing questions about what those strategies should look like. Just by sheer coincidence, I literally bumped into one of my customers outside who's a CISO for a very large bank. And he asked me, well, he was facing some questions from his board members about how long the transition plan would be. Amusingly, some people thought that is it a 6-month problem or a 1-year problem? And I was like, no, this is a 6-year problem. And the board member then said, oh, so this is a 2 CEO problem. It is a two CEO problem. And if you think about the timelines that we're looking at in terms of transitioning from where we are today to where we need to be to resist the attacks from quantum computing, it is a two CEO problem. That needs a roadmap, a plan that sustains beyond current leadership priorities, that sustains a company well past what their immediate bound profit and loss concerns are. That's huge. Many organizations are not prepared for that level of long-term planning and transitioning. And many of the companies that I work with struggle to wrap their head around what does it mean to have a 6 to 7 year plan around cryptography? What does that even mean? So that's the challenges that I face. But once you have a clear sense of that timeline, you realize the magnitude of the work involved in this transition. Today's discussion will dive into some of the technical challenges, the need for agility in our solutions, and how to establish confidence with these new approaches. But we should also frame them with the bigger picture, that this is also a geopolitical challenge. There are geopolitical forces at play. The potential for our adversaries to use quantum technology to compromise our data, we spoke about harvest now, decrypt later as one of those vectors, makes our work even more critical. Earlier this year, I was invited by the United Nations to discuss the geopolitical risks of quantum in Geneva. It is useful to note, and I make this with no understatement, it is useful to note that the organization that invited me to talk was called the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research. That indicates what they think quantum is. If the Institute for Disarmament Research is inviting you to talk about quantum, they think it's a weapon, not a tool. And so framing it in that geopolitical context of what the power and the magnitude of impact that quantum can bring to the world highlights the enormous risk that's on one hand, as well as opportunity on the other. We then come to tools. Cryptography is obviously one of the key tools that we'll talk about, and it's one of the tools that we think can help us in that transition. But PQC was just announced. It's a new tool. We don't have any experience using it. We have no confidence in applying it. And frankly, nobody really wants to be the first mover because there's no advantage to it. So the transition will be a very slow, delicate, measured move. And it'll be a challenging move because you can't do things in parallel. There is a sequence to transition. You can't have 3, 4 different types of encryption on the same piece of data. Because of that, that transition will be lengthened. And that will add some risk, add some time, add some challenges and burden to the operators. These new tools, the ones that are being built now, the ones that are being designed to help us with this migration, will help, but all of us are learning things from afresh. And as the previous panel shared, there are some lessons we can learn from the first generation of migration in cryptography to where we are today, but some lessons are unique. Classical encryption was classical computing. Quantum is new, and very few of us in this room have access to, let alone understand intimately how that actually works, and have access to applying that technology in context. And because of that, we're relying a lot on theory, which is fantastic. Theoretically, it should work, but practically, we know there will always be new challenges. We've got a fantastic panel to help us navigate these complex landscapes, so I'm sure we'll come away with some valuable insights on how to make the transition to quantum both effective and manageable. We won't have all the answers, but in a journey this long, a 2 CEO journey, perhaps we can at least agree on the right questions and take some baby steps forward. With that, let's get started. I'd like to invite our first speaker to share, Mr. John Buscelli, the offering manager for IBM. Mr. John, please.
Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Before I begin, I'd like to first of all thank my hosts, both the SICW and CSA, for inviting me and my colleagues today. It's a great pleasure, and I very much look forward to this panel. My name is John Buscelli. I'm the Global Offering Manager for the IBM Quantum Safe organization. I'll take for granted that most of you know who IBM is in this room. What I'll do to start really is to frame where quantum sits in the IBM organization and what are our basic principles and objectives. The quantum effort inside of IBM sits within the research company. The IBM research entity is the world's largest industrial research lab. We're about 6,000 people, about $7 billion of impact on the company. We've got about 3,500 PhDs and 3,500 other individuals that focus on all kinds of innovation, including security and cryptographic innovation in quantum. And our history really in this area is quite profound. We've been involved on the quantum side since the inception of the technology and have been involved in many aspects of cryptography really since the beginning of computing. And so our effort now really just represents a very long history of innovation. Inside the quantum organization, we like to think of ourselves as having two sides of a coin. There's all the effort and energy that's going into making quantum computing useful. And then there's the other side of the coin that I represent, and that is what are we doing to mitigate the risk of quantum computing, which is the purpose of today. Just to sort of frame how we're organized, to help orient you to this discussion today, there are really three fundamental things that we're doing here in research, or three fundamental areas in terms of how we're organized. There's our basic research operation, both pure research and applied research. As it relates to cryptography, again, there's fundamental mathematic innovation, and then applied cryptography, most recently evidenced by the contributions that IBM researchers, as part of my organization that I'm a part of, along with our academic partners and industry partners in terms of creating 3 of the 4 initial NIST algorithms that have recently been certified. It's a tremendous source of pride in our organization to be in that position. Point of order, Falcon, which is the 4th one, which was not certified by NIST, but will be later in the year. Ward Bulins now works for us as well. It just reflects sort of our investment and commitment historically, and in this very important initiative to assist the world in becoming quantum safe. The other aspects of our business are really twofold. There is a recognition, and I think Gaurav alluded to this, and I'll add to it, that we're at the inflection point, or I should say the beginning point really of this journey in industry. So as an organization that's also involved in fundamental research and cryptographic research, how we advise and guide our clients, our partners, the broader ecosystem on how to initiate and manage this kind of a journey is a very critical initiative. The other side of the coin is technology. If we've learned anything in our efforts over the last 5 or 6 years, this process is complicated. If we think about the complexity of the modern organization, if we think about the implications of the ecosystem, if we think about supply chain considerations, this transformation journey is going to take time. Clearly, the value of automation here to actually mitigate this issue in a cost-effective and more timely manner is as equally important, if not more so, than the fact that we've created new cryptographic schemes to protect us from the misuse of quantum computing. And it's really this entire envelope, if you like, of products, services, and perspective that reflect the organization that I'm a part of. Sort of building on the spirit of today's panel, I just wanted to sort of highlight maybe 5 critical things that may help set the tenor of this conversation. And that is really, what is our strategy and how do we see it? How would we be representing ourselves to our partners, our community, to governments, to regulatory bodies, and other kinds of consortia? And there's really sort of 5 critical things that we sort of focus on. There's gaining visibility within the enterprise. What's the scope of the problem? We've heard about it in the previous panel. I'll just reinforce that point. What's the magnitude of the change, and what does that change look like? There's prioritizing, which is sort of the natural step that comes with understanding the scope of the problem. Where does anyone begin? We have to make critical choices. We have limits of resources. How do we apply our best practices to that problem in a constructive and organized way? The third part is really preparing for the quantum safe future. Now, this is multifaceted, maybe specifically for today's conversation, gaining experience and knowledge in the algorithms themselves. Again, as Gaurav mentioned very aptly, this is new. There's limited experience. So how can we practically and purposefully gain that knowledge so we understand more so about the implications? There's complying with ever-changing regulations and guidelines. This may be the least mature, but maybe the most important point of this conversation. The earlier panel highlighted in terms of what the drive and implications might be. I don't think we can emphasize enough the requirement for enterprises, industry, consortia, and governments to work holistically and globally to achieve this end. And then there's bridging the knowledge gap. If I've learned anything over my last 5 or 6 years on this process in IBM, is that there is a serious gap in expertise and skills. We can make a lot of assumptions. Now, I think this is true in security broadly, but I think this effort helps accentuate the gap that's still in front of us to create skills, create knowledge, create guidance and expertise. And this is generally how we're focusing our time. So with that, I'll cede it to the next guest, although I do want to add one comment to what Gaurav said. He described it as a 2 CEO problem. I happened to have a conversation last week in a similar vein, and I would describe it as a 4 CISO problem, okay, in that vein. Anyway, it's a pleasure. I look forward to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bruselli. Next, we would like to invite Mr. Ben Packman, please.
Hi folks, I'm Ben Packman. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of PQ Shield. We've managed to talk about standards today without actually talking about the standards themselves. So I thought I'd put them up on screen. So we have 3 standards, FIPS, 203, 204, and 205. And we've got a key exchange mechanism and 2 digital signatures that have been standardized so far, on top of 2 other algorithms that were already considered hash-based algorithms, LMS and XMSS. And so we've actually got a suite of algorithms. And the point of me putting up the FIPS numbers is that these are standards. This starts to move the conversation slightly away from the quantum topic and slightly towards compliance, right? It's not going to be optional, folks, right? So I think we should get that in our brains and start thinking about the fact that we are going to have to deploy these new standards rather than perhaps maybe we'll do that when a quantum computer becomes a bit more relevant to me. So that's really important. And as John mentioned earlier, there is a 4th algorithm that was announced, Falcon, that is apparently going to be, the draft will be released by the end of the year, and therefore we would expect that to be standardized mid-next year sometime. And these 4 algorithms that I mentioned were the result of the round 3 of the NIST standardization process. There is still a round 4 open. There are still more algorithms that are being considered, and NIST have said recently that they will come to a conclusion on round 4 by the end of this year, and therefore there may be 1, maybe 2 additional algorithms to consider. And it doesn't stop there. There are another on-ramp of digital signatures using different maths that NIST wanted submitted last year, and there are currently about 40 algorithms sitting in that review pile right now, and they're planning to do the first reduction down to, say, 15, 20 of those, again, by the end of this year. So it's constantly moving, but we do have standards to comply to. And we talk about new. It's not that new, right? The maths that sits behind a lot of these algorithms is decades old, okay? 8 years, 82 algorithms, down to 4 finalists. A lot of time and effort have gone in to the global community. This isn't just an American NIST process. There have been people from all over the world, including people who are on this panel today, who have been heavily involved in this process. And so there is a level of maturity there. There is a level of scrutiny that this has gone through that is actually way beyond a lot of the other cryptographic introductions we've seen in the past. And there is communication across the globe, across different standards bodies. People from ISO, people from ANSI, people from BSI, people from GCHQ, and the list goes on, have all been in some way, shape, or form involved in the NIST standardization process. So those local standards bodies or regional standards bodies are not coming into this new. They've already been on part of the journey. And so I can see that over the next 6 to 12 months, we will see a cascade of those recommendations, endorsing the NIST standards, maybe having their own take on some of those things, coming out to market. And I think that's really important to remember, that the train left the station a little while ago, right? Okay, it hasn't left the station today. And also, this stuff's being deployed at a huge scale already. Someone like Cloudflare already has PQC throughout their entire platform. Yeah. Google already supports PQC in Chrome. Signal, end-to-end messaging, already rolling out across their whole platform. If you're using iOS 18, you're using PQC in iMessage today. Okay? And people like Meta and Zoom have started rolling out PQ-TLS as well. So these are millions and millions and millions of end users accessing PQC today. So again, this isn't new. This is being rolled out at scale. A little bit about PQ Shield. We are a bunch of world-leading experts. We're 77 people across 11 countries. We've been heavily involved in the NIST process, along with some of my esteemed panelists today. We're proud to say that we were involved, have our fingerprints on all 4 of the standards that have been announced. We continue to be involved with NIST on those new processes that I mentioned earlier. And we're also involved in many different working groups, be that NCCOE, be that World Economic Forum, be that GSMA, and many, many others. There are many working groups around the world already working on this process. Apart from just getting involved in the standardization, we've also been working in the background on the real-world implementation. It's all very well having a great algorithm, but if you implement it badly, you'll be just as vulnerable. So things like side channel resistance, very, very important. Things like certification, very important. And we've been involved in many different projects and produced some mature products that were actually deployed to the market today. And we do that in software and hardware IP. And these are the types of companies we're already working with. People like Microchip, people like AMD, people like Sumitomo Electric in Japan, people like Lockheed Martin. Actually, on this journey, you're in good company, because there are lots of companies that have become pre-standards early adopters of this. And I'm not talking about just proof of concepts. Microchip are in 4 tape-outs to silicon with our IP today. Okay? These products are coming to the market rapidly over the next 12 to 18 months. So I mentioned that we've got solutions in software. We actually have our first crypto library achieved the FIPS 140-3 certification. So that was a fantastic achievement. You know, it took 2.5 years to do, and ultimately we got that just a couple of weeks ago. We also have hardware accelerators, because it's not just enough to have this in software. We're going to have to put this into our FPGAs and our ASIC devices in order to move this forwards. And we have various different levels, from platform security right the way up to high throughput, high speed PQC acceleration. And more importantly, we have it in silicon already ourselves. So we have the first NIST-compliant silicon on our desk, in our labs, that we built ourselves, so that we could prove that side channel resistance, that fault attack resistance that we need in order to gain that maturity and that confidence for everybody. And we've also thought about how this aligns to different certification standards. So we have 3 levels of security grade that we apply to our products: cloud, edge, and government. To give you an example, government being, for example, the cryptography that might go on the chip that's in your bank card, right? It's a chip that could be put into a lab. Any attack could be run on it, and therefore it needs the highest level of side channel and fault attack tolerance. So in order to do that, we've put it into silicon so that we can not do that in simulation mode, we can do that in the real world. And so that's me today. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the panel. And we've got plenty of guides that you guys can download and read as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Packman. Next, we'd like to invite Professor Ding Jintai to speak.
So good afternoon. So my name is Jintai Ding, and the title of my lecture, or my quick explanation, is Post-Quantum Migration, a Historical Challenge for the Modern Digital Economy. So the main purpose of what I stand here for 5 minutes is actually to try to clarify some of the concepts about post-quantum cryptography. Anyway, I started to do post-quantum cryptography in year 2000, not right after Peter Shor's work. Peter Shor's work was only theoretical. The first thing that made me to do post-quantum cryptography is because there was a guy, his name is Isaac Chuan. He spent $15 million to show 15 equal to 3 times 5, which every elementary student can do. But he built a quantum computer to prove Shor's algorithm could work. So I started work in year 2000. So I have been working on post-quantum cryptography for 25 years. So you can see post-quantum cryptography is not young. Okay, it's pretty mature. Okay, and I'm one of the designers for Kyber, for FIPS 203. Also, I'm one of the owners of the 2 patents licensed to Kyber. And we did many work, including break what is called the GEMMS, a third round candidate. Okay, so today I would like to clarify something concerning post-quantum cryptography, in particular about the definition. Why do we do post-quantum cryptography? In this context, I would emphasize the difference between post-quantum cryptography and the classical cryptography. So post-quantum cryptography belongs to what is called modern cryptography. And you would ask me, what is classical cryptography? A best example of a classical cryptography is this Enigma machine used the German U-boat in the Second World War. So this is what's called symmetric crypto. What does it mean? The sender and receiver must have exactly same keys. Okay? And you watch the movies and read the books about how important those are, and you would wonder why you didn't use this nice machine everywhere in Germany if this machine is not good. And they only use it in submarines. The reason is because of key management. Imagine if you want every division in the army to have the key book. If one division is captured by the enemy, they will have the key book. But the good thing about submarines is what? Normally they don't survive. They go to what? The bottom of the ocean. Therefore, the key book could be what? Kept a secret. So therefore, symmetric cryptography is not scalable because of key management. You cannot have many keys distributed all over the place. You cannot. But it was okay. It was used by government, used by armies, and so on. It is okay, only on a small scale, because you cannot keep too many key books. And then you would say, why do we do modern cryptography or public key cryptography? Why? Because in 1960s, 70s, we developed what is called large computer networks. Imagine in China, 1.4 billion people, every 2 guys have to do a key exchange. That's the only thing you do for your whole life, isn't it? So therefore, we must find solutions. But this solution must have one property, which is called one-to-many, not one-to-one. One-to-one is easy. For example, public key cryptography has 2 sets of keys. One is public. Okay, for example, if I have a digital signature, I announce to the whole world my public key. Anybody who can do arithmetics, which means can do addition, multiplication, and what? Can verify my signature. And I cannot deny it. So therefore, once I announce my public key, let me repeat, anyone in the whole world on the network can verify my signature. We don't care about the one-to-one solution. We want what? We want a one-to-many solution. So that is the key. So we must have efficient solution. And the invention, of course, the idea of a public key cryptography was proposed by Diffie-Hellman, such that we have 2 keys not symmetric anymore. One public, announced to the whole world, so one-to-many, and one I have myself. So therefore, for the key exchange purpose, once I announce to the whole world my public key, anyone can send me secret information. Only I can read it. The efficiency is the key. If I don't care about efficiency, I can just talk to everybody, get shared keys. I'm done. Okay? And this is an incredible invention, okay? And one good example is Microsoft Windows update. We all do update, right? How do you know the update you got is from Microsoft? How do you know nobody put a virus in it? How? It's because Microsoft announced to the whole world its public key, and it signs on the package. Therefore, you can use this public key to verify the software package is from Microsoft. Nobody can pretend to be Microsoft. That's the key point. Okay? So in the end, what is the point? The point is now we are building what is called digital economy. Okay? Everything is digitized. Yeah? We have cell phones, computers, IoT device, cards, and so on. We all talk to each other. We build a huge mobile networks. On the networks, there are 2 things we care. Number 1, trust, which means that when I receive a message from my mother, ask for money, I have to make sure it's from my mother, not somebody else. And number 2 is what? I want to make it what? The information secret. And this relies completely on what? Public key cryptography. So in public key cryptography, we have 2 things. Number 1, digital signature. It solves the trust problem. Number 2, key exchange. It solves the secrecy problem. And one more important property public key cryptography provides, which is called network independent. When you receive a message, you don't care which network you use, right? Your cell phone, you move all around. You don't rely on the network. I don't care how I receive it. Okay, when I receive a package from Microsoft with a digital signature, I can verify it. I don't care from which channel. I don't care. So this network independency is very important. So what does quantum computer do? Quantum computer will destroy these two things. And if we allow that to happen, the digital economy will collapse. We cannot build trust. We cannot build secrecy. Finished. So therefore, for long-term security, we must do what? Post-quantum cryptography, period. Okay, so here maybe I would add one more comment. The difference between PQC and QKD is what? PQC is one to many. QKD is one to one. Therefore what? It is irrelevant to the problem we want to solve. Let me repeat. If you want to solve security and trust problem on a large computer network efficiently, you have no choice but to use public key cryptography, or PQC, which is quantum-safe public key cryptography, period. Okay, and then one more comment I would make. People always ask, when? When should we do migration? I think you all know Turing, right? You know he broke an Enigma machine, right? That's why I showed the Enigma machine. But do you know, does anybody knows Falkland Island War? Does anybody know? Yes, that's the war between what? Argentina and what? UK in 1980s. Do you know what is the crypto system used in the Argentina Navy? Enigma machine. Why? Can someone tell me why? We know it's broken, right? No, we did not know. United Kingdom, right? United Kingdom kept it secret for 40, 50 years. Therefore what? UK is happily listening to everybody's Enigma machine communication. So what? They know whatever you do. The same thing I would ask the audience is, suppose you or Professor Kramer here have a quantum computer. Will he tell me? Or he will just sit in his room, read everybody's email, go to bank account, change the numbers. Right? So this Q day does not exist, in my opinion. It is all about the risk assessment. If you think your asset has risk, think about it. You don't have to do it. As long as you're willing to what? Take the responsibility for the future. You don't have to do migration at all. The same case in the German U-boat case, right? They trust the Enigma machine, so up to you. I don't think, what I firmly believe is that we will not know the first quantum computer being built until 10 years or 20 years later. Because whoever has the first powerful quantum computer will not tell anybody. So think about it. So then you should decide the risk, and then you decide when you should migrate. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ding. And now we'd like to invite our fourth panelist, Dr. Amelia Tan, please.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Amelia, and I'm from ST Engineering. Quantum technology isn't just about the future. It is my present. What if I told you the future of cybersecurity and innovation rests on a single principle I have spent years mastering? Well, I did my PhD in quantum physics and chemistry at the National University of Singapore and US, not knowing that the field I have studied will land me in this multidisciplinary cybersecurity space. It was then I realized that traditional technology was insufficient to meet the challenges of the future. Imagine a world where hacking is obsolete and the systems that we rely on are unbreakable. How incredible would that be? That's exactly what I'm working on. With the rise of quantum computers, complex computational problems can be solved in mere seconds. whereas a supercomputer today might take 10,000 years in solving the same complex problem. While quantum computers offer significant advantage, it also poses a threat to break the current cryptographic algorithm by drastically reducing the key strength. Hackers can download encrypted personal information today, and once quantum computers become commercially available, they will be able to decrypt your valuable data and access your secure information for future use, which is also known as your Harvest Now and Decrypt Later attacks. To counter this risk, we are stepping up efforts to build quantum resiliency. We are focusing mainly on 3 areas. Firstly, quantum key distribution, which uses properties of quantum physics to secure key distribution channel. Secondly, implementing and adopting post-quantum cryptographic algorithms to further strengthen encryption. And lastly, quantum key management system, QKMS for short, a software layer to manage quantum keys supporting any QKD devices. ST Engineering has been involved early on in setting up quantum secure test links in Singapore to measure performance, key, and error rates for different QKD systems, so as to know the limits and constraints to aid deployability. We have taken it a notch further by developing scalable QKD architecture with an additional third node to evaluate its security and demonstrating comprehensive integration tests with the quantum-safe applications, relay nodes implementation, assessing its performance, best practices, and use cases. ST Engineering is also part of the National Quantum Safe Network, which is a nationwide platform to deploy a QKD testbed across Singapore. It is a network between government agencies and industries to discuss the current security system, develop guidelines and standards, and to support companies in adopting quantum technologies. ST Engineering is also involved in drafting the reference specifications and common criteria under the IMDA and CSA. Additionally, we contribute to the Task Force for Standards and Certifications. We also serve as a co-editor in the ITU task force led by NUS. At ST Engineering, I'm spearheading the quantum technology and the development suite of quantum products for dual-use applications in commercial and defense. Besides quantum communications, we are also developing other areas of quantum, such as quantum computing, quantum machine learning, and quantum sensors. I will stay informed on the latest quantum technology by scanning and evaluating technologies and solutions in the market to stay ahead. If you are interested in collaborating or partnering with us, please feel free to reach out to me after this session. I work closely with startups and enterprises to help them go to market faster and to demonstrate the potential by applying to different use cases. My team and I would brief our management and stakeholders our product roadmaps, business strategies, and goals, thus delivering business results. We also work together with our venture partners and provide recommendations for capital investments to help our defense and commercial businesses achieve their objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amelia Tan. And of course, now, without further ado, I'd like to hand the time over to our moderator, Mr. Gaurav Kirti, to take us through this exciting panel discussion on key changes for quantum safety. Over to you.
Thank you so much, and once again, a round of applause for all of our panelists for sharing such deep insights and some provocative thoughts as well. Once again, we do have the online system available for you to ask questions on Slido. If you've already scanned the QR code, please feel free to ask questions on that. If you have not, maybe you could flash the QR code again just so that the audience can get that again. I want to kickstart the conversation with a question of my own, but fortunately, somebody in the audience has asked a very similar question, so I'm trying to merge them both. Many of the panelists spoke about the announcement a few months ago about the publication of the PQC standards by NIST. And it's big news for us. There's some light ahead. There's a path forward. But the panelists were also cautious when they spoke about it. They said this is the first step. There'll be more pruning. There'll be more algorithms. There's more work to be done. There'll be new algorithms coming out that'll be evaluated. Some of the audience members have asked, why do we call these PQC algorithms the first steps? Are there more coming? Why? How can crypto agility help? And is it the right time to start moving? Another person asked, why don't we implement it immediately? Is there a problem starting straight away? Will our current hardware support a PQC certificate? So I guess the question I have for the panel is we've got a good first step with this announcement. Is it time to start moving already? What would your advice be to organizations? Maybe start with you.
Based on what I've seen and the feedback I've gotten, I would agree generally with the principle. This is a good first step. In my experience and the feedback we've received, really, I think I would just advise to begin to experiment. The algorithms are available. Anything you can do to gain expertise and insight into how they work, I think would be a natural and very valuable first step. There are more algorithms coming. We know that. NIST is not done with this process. They also don't want to concentrate the new schemes around a set of certain mathematical principles. They want diversity. So we know more schemes are coming just to ensure the variety of cryptographic schemes on the horizon, so that the challenges of cracking these codes are becoming more complex as a result. Turn it to you,
Ms. Brackman?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, John. I think the fact that we've got more algorithms coming, I don't think should be interpreted as weakness in the existing algorithms standardized. Actually, it's the opposite effect that's trying to be achieved here. What we're trying to achieve here is recognize that for the last 40-odd years, we've relied on a very limited set of cryptographic algorithms. And if you think about how life has changed in 40 years, okay, what quantum revolution, I think, represents is that pace of change just got even faster and even more diverse and even more risks to manage. And so I think all NIST are trying to recognize here is that there are edge cases, there are different use cases for different types of algorithms. Some you will require to be fast but slightly less secure. Some you will require to be very large and very secure for certain types of things. And so that diversity is to give some strength and depth to the whole process rather than to represent any kind of weakness in the existing. The fact that those standards have been published and that NIST pushed for those first 3 to be pushed out was to give us all the standards and the starting gun to get on with it, right? So that's my...
Prof Ding, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I would like to add some comment. And number one, if you look at the United States, they decided. So by the way, I'm a US citizen, even then I work in China at the moment. And they already decided, US is moving. For example, if you look at AWS, the chief cryptographer Matt told me their customer director asked, especially those high-value customers with sensitive data, they ask, are you ready? So therefore, AWS has deployed. But you should remember, United States has a deadline. By 2030 or 33, all the key infrastructures must be updated. Done. On the other hand, I would like to add a few comments about cryptography. People somehow think cryptography is something never been changed, or just one solution for all. But you should remember, right? You're doing software updates all the time. Why can't we do cryptography updates also from time to time? Therefore, this crypto agility is very important. So one problem with our current security system, I believe, is because at the beginning, we add security as a patch, not security by design. So we had many problems. Because we find a problem, we have a hole, we patch it. That's what happened. But this agility essentially tells us, no, we cannot do that. We should systematically look at our systems, do upgrades, and actually you have to make sure it's agile, which means if something happens wrong, we have to update it. I think that is the key, which means for the hardware, for example, there are existing hardwares which is impossible to replace the crypto device inside. We cannot do that. In the future, you should not allow that to happen, period. Okay? So what I firmly believe is cryptography is just building a bridge. We never promise a bridge should never collapse. We promise in 50 years, 60 years, we'll update it. I think the future of cryptography is the same because we kept improving also attacking methods. Therefore, you should not expect our crypto system to be what? To standing forever. But this time, maybe I would like to add one more comment about the NIST. I have to give credit to NIST. Okay? NIST had a very transparent, open, fair process. And you can see this guy, Daniel Bernstein, said many, many strong things about NIST. It's okay. It's an open process. So therefore, we know the risk. Okay, we know what the best attacks are. We know what are hard mathematics we have to deal with. And with our best knowledge, we believe what? It's secure, period. We can never promise absolute security. Just like your software, you update all the time. So therefore, we what? We should keep update. And one last thing is, I think you should migrate immediately if you think you have something valuable, period. This is my suggestion. Okay, thank you.
Fair point. Dr. Tan?
I think the eventual goal of this post-quantum migration is to actually future-proof against threats of quantum computing attacks. So I think first of all, you need to actually educate your IT professionals, your software engineers, to developers and the new NIST standards and how to start implementing them into the current existing systems, right? So the next thing is to actually update the crypto libraries, the protocol system to support these new algorithms. So the algorithm must undergo rigorous testing and formal verification to ensure they are secure to perform well in the real-world applications. So the next of all is to monitor continuously and have an active feedback loop with your IT professionals to address any potential vulnerabilities that arise and keep improving each time. And the last of all is to have a concrete plan to migrate your systems to quantum safe without disrupting daily operations. Prioritize what comes first, and you have to do that first. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much. There were a couple of mentions of agility and a new way of thinking about how to handle cryptography. Instead of moving once every generation, we treat it as software patches. Every couple of years, when there's something new, we move. But this idea of crypto agility is new. It is something relatively novel for us to think about. And some of the audience members have asked, what are your considerations with respect to crypto agility? To what extent do you think this will become the norm, and how do we make that the norm? Maybe, John, we start with you again.
No, I think it's a really important issue. The way I would phrase it to begin, though, is a bit of a concern, because there's an expectation that agility is something you acquire. We've had agile concepts in code development for quite some time, and the fact of the matter is they're designed, they're implemented, they're crafted. There's no magic that I'm aware of right now that's going to magically transform code to become agile. There are efforts afoot, I'll grant you that, but they're not mature yet. And so I think we need to be very cautious. But the idea, though, that we abstract away cryptography from hard-coded in applications, which has been the norm, and like many other agile models, make it service-oriented and therefore highly replaceable, is almost bordering on common sense. Right? And yes, it is fundamental to ensuring that future change, which is coming because there's more algorithms coming, or in the future when we're worried about warp drives or something else, we no longer find ourselves in this position. And I think that's really the point I would make. So it's going to take time, and it's going to actually take a lot of human effort.
Yeah. Next. Do we see any first steps in terms of crypto agility?
So first of all, I think it's an absolute mindset, right? Absolutely. It's a mindset shift, which is once upon a time, as has already been said, it's kind of a code and forget. Well, I coded in that algorithm, and I used RSA XYZ and blah, 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 and that's fine, and I don't have to think about it again. The mindset shift, what crypto agility represents to me more than anything else, is that is not acceptable anymore, right? So software architects, solution architects, hardware architects need to think about how security can be evolved over time, because the threat landscape will change. And so I think that's the first step, is to change that mindset, change that discussion, and put security as a by design piece, right, rather than by accident or by default or by afterthought, right? That is no longer acceptable. The threats are too large.
To steal your words, it is common sense, but it's rather uncommon, unfortunately. The conversation around security by design is also at least a decade old and still an uphill struggle. Do you think that there will be practical steps that we can take to accelerate this conversation on crypto agility beyond this current trajectory? Because my big fear is that it remains common sense and remains uncommon 5 to 10 years from now. So what are the specific steps you think we could take? Maybe Professor Ding, you shared a little bit about this idea that we need to start moving quickly.
Yes.
What do you think are the practical steps?
So I think it's very important. So I happen to be the chief quantum scientist or quantum safety scientist for Construction Bank of China. So something very interesting happened in China. They called nationalization of cryptography for their systems. So what happened is in the Chinese banking system, they try to replace all the existing United States or international standard with Chinese standard. For example, they have an SMS series. So they did that, and it took them 10 years. But what I found out very interesting in Construction Bank, they did exactly what is called agility, which means they made a list of all the cryptographic applications, and then they isolated them. Okay, and from the architecture perspective, they completely lay out the whole construction, and then they design the security, they reformulate it, such that they can have complete control of all the crypto modules. So therefore, they claim to me, at least from my understanding, that this time for the PQC migration, they can do it easily because they know exactly where they are and they modularized. Okay, so I think this is what they did. This is very important, but not only is this not easy to achieve, I have to acknowledge that. In particular, what they told me something very interesting, because in the former times, security solutions normally given as patches. We have a hole, patch it. We have a hole, we patch it. And often this guy retired already. We don't even know where the holes are. So I think that is a serious problem. The most important thing is let's first find all the patches. Okay, otherwise we're doomed.
Yeah, well, we've got to start somewhere. And I think there are a number of other questions. We've been focusing a lot today in the conversation about PQC, the cryptographic part of things. But Professor Ding also shared there's the key exchange. And QKD is something that we talk about as well, as perhaps an alternative, perhaps as a complementary strategy. Maybe, Dr. Tan, what are your thoughts about PQC and QKD? Is it an either or? Is it versus? Is it together? How does it work? And maybe share your thoughts a little bit about strategies that organizations should take.
Sure, Gaurav. So in my opinion, I do not really think that it is like either one or the other, like PQC or QKD. You actually have to have both together to actually have a holistic kind of approach and solutions. So for what I think is PQC is more of like you can implement right now, it's an immediate solution. Whereas QKD is like you have to have all your infrastructure ready to implement with your existing structures. So for me, I would think both must go hand in hand, but PQC is more of a layer that you can actually do like your software layers to implement right now. Whereas your QKD, you can do it like you can apply to like more classified information, your financial data, your healthcare data. So I think that is more added layer of security that I would say.
Thanks. I'm going to jump to John.
Can I add one more comment?
Go ahead, yes.
So, actually, my slides actually address this part. I disagree. Okay, I disagree completely. Okay, let me repeat. QKD solves point-to-point problem. The security relies on the line to be secure. PQC solves large computer network problem. At the moment, let me repeat, we only care about solutions for large computer networks. In particular, we care very much about my cell phone. I want to be secure. Okay, QKD does not provide any solution. QKD may be used for military, for something, but I don't care. Okay, I only do public research for commercial applications. I think for commercial applications, as long as it's a large computer network. Okay, if you only care about point-to-point, yes, QKD, go ahead. But as long as you care about large computer networks, QKD is irrelevant. This is what I firmly believe. And one more thing I would like to add is on the network, not only we want the secrecy, we want the trust. Okay, imagine if you don't have digital signature, how can you do Windows update? There's no quantum signature. So which means we're going to mail everybody a CD every day? No. We must build trust on computer networks, large computer networks. Okay, this problem can only be solved by PQC. It has nothing to do with QKD. Therefore, what I believe is, for the moment, for our digital economy, okay, I'm not talking about military, I'm not talking about government, I don't care. Okay, for everyday life, no. Only PQC. QKD is irrelevant. If you're a military officer, do whatever you want. I don't care. Okay?
I'm going to get to you, but I want to say that actually the audience benefits the most when you have diverse views on the panel. And that's when you get real fun happening. So with that, please, John.
I was waiting for the bell to ring.
Yeah.
No, I would frame it this way. Any discussion of security begins with a discussion of what is the threat that you're trying to mitigate.
Yep.
First and foremost, you look there, and then you choose the right tool for the job. There's room across the spectrum of needs for both PQC and QKD. Whatever the maturity levels are, we know that they are going to solve different problems, and eventually there will be an amalgamation. And that's how I would look at it long term.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's important to remember that cryptography is about risk mitigation. There is no such thing as risk elimination, right? And therefore, backing up the sort of general point of view here is that if you want to take your systems forward and you want to mitigate against the quantum threat, your only game in town for mass deployment is PQC, right? That doesn't mean to say that you can't use QKD in certain applications, and in some cases it will be great, I'm sure. However, mass deployment is really where we need to be thinking, and that's really where that endorsement of PQC comes in.
Yeah, it's just for ordinary people. I think we care about PQC. For military people, maybe they care about QKD.
Yeah. Different use cases, different problems, different tools. Yes,
that's
please,
correct.
Dr. Tan.
Maybe I think if you can use like PQC for everyday communications, while you can use like QKD for sensitive transactions between government, militaries, yeah.
Different use cases, different solutions,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
There's an interesting comment here. It's not really a question, but it's something to think about. QKD is often implemented by network engineers. PQC is often implemented by cryptographers. The IT and cyber skill sets for both of those pools of people are quite different. And there's a huge gap, particularly among the network engineers, to deal with the problem that's on hand. I don't think it's a problem we want to dive into right now, but it is something for us to think about. That the individuals who implement the solutions may not be the ones who are most adjacent to the problem space itself. I've got a few minutes left, and I want to ask one kind of broad question that was raised by the audience, and I think it's an important one. Given the long 2 CEO or 4 CISO duration and journey of this transition to quantum-safe cryptography, how should organizations prioritize their migration efforts across assets, processes, technologies, particularly balancing the more immediate cybersecurity needs and long-term threats of quantum computing? I remind everybody that we're at the Singapore International Cyber Week. 99% of the other rooms here are worried about ransomware, hacks, malware, the daily pressing things that could cause one of the 4 CISOs in that journey to lose their jobs. While we're also trying to plan for a 4 CISO transition plan. So how do you balance that stresses on the organization?
Go ahead.
Yeah, please, Ben.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of talk about how to plan this process. I'm a pragmatist at heart. Most CISOs sit in their organization are not in control of the cryptography that is used day to day in their networks. Their vendors are. So my personal view is the first port of call is to actually go and look at your key vendors and look at where they're at on their transition journey and try and work out how they fit into your jigsaw puzzle. Because I think that's easier to digest. And I think that's going to tell you a little bit more about what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. Because for most enterprises, let's ignore companies that build product for a second, most enterprises, 80-odd% of this problem is sitting in the supply chain. Yes, of course, there's 20% of it that you might have built that set of integrations, you might have that app you built, that you might have that thing running in the corner that does a transaction every month that's covered in dust, right? Those are things that you're going to have to look at. And then it's a question of kind of breaking it down from there. So I think that's one way to look at it. I think then looking at what is the half-life, if you like, of the data that you're trying to protect. If something has been and gone in 10 seconds, it's less likely to be a problem for you than something that needs to be maintained for 20, 30 years. So I think there are some pragmatic steps you can take to cut the problem down. Because I think for most enterprises, what you will end up finding is that this migration looks suspiciously like, in its bulk, yeah, an IT refresh program, right, over the course of a number of years. So you're not going to go and put some new crypto inside your Cisco switches. You're going to take a refresh cycle and build and buy some new ones, right? Okay. So I think that there's a lot of talk about how this gets managed by the enterprise. I think it's a little simpler than that. I'm not belittling the problem. It's a big migration, but I think we can think about it in a slightly simpler way, and it will make it more digestible.
Okay, so I talked to the banks in China. From what I know, the banks told me they will not do migration without government regulations, period. Okay, I think the government initiative is essential. For example, I'm now involved in the project supported by Ministry of Science of China, which is led by the Central Bank of China. So I think it's essential. I think the government agency should take actions to protect its own asset. I mean, the Bank of China, the Central Bank of China told us, it's essential. They have to do it. So therefore, I think on one hand, the government must take the lead, no doubt. The second aspect, I think, is the commercial part. So if you have assets, digital assets, very valuable, then you should take action, period. And if you have no digital assets of high value, you don't care. You don't have to do anything. This is my point. But on the other hand, I think it is really important government work with the commercial entities. This is not a simple, I think it's not a simple commercial or whatever solution problem. It's infrastructure. I think whatever the infrastructure is, we always build with government support. Without the government support, nothing will be done. But the one thing I would emphasize, as Graf said earlier, so this is basically a global warming problem. It's about our whole network. It cannot be that the United States migrate, China does not. Then you cannot talk to each other. The network collapses. So we have to what? Overall, I think we have to migrate together, period. Otherwise, we cannot talk to each other. So in the end, I think this is really a collaboration between the government and the commercial enterprise. Otherwise, it will not succeed. I think, period. Okay. These two entities must work together closely and make a plan.
Absolutely. Dr. Chan, anything else you wanted to add about advice to organizations planning this complex transition?
I think one thing is to have a very clear documentation of what your organization has. Keep track of what you actually have and actually see what are the gaps and to fill it in. And also to actually have a continuous management of your key lifecycle practices. For example, like you generate and distribute PQC keys securely. And also to address any compatibility issues with a legacy system that does not support PQC. Yeah.
Thanks. We have run out of time. We still have so many more questions, and I have so many more questions I want to get into with them. But I do want to wrap up very, very quickly. I can't cover the breadth and the depth that we've covered today in the conversation, but I want to leave you with a little bit of a comment on the conversation. I think, Ben, you described yourself as a pragmatist. I describe myself as an optopragmatist, which is basically I hope for the best, plan for the worst, and expect reality to kick me in the nether regions. And that's usually what happens. We have a plan. We have started, we've taken baby steps forward, we have some idea of what transition might look like, but I'm also a pessimist, realizing how difficult it was for any sort of change to happen. We've been talking about, in the rest of SICW, secure by design for a very long time, and it's still an uphill battle for even the most basic applications to reach there. So there is an uphill struggle, but I'm a pragmatist. We start small, move quickly, and try to adapt along the way. One of the things that was said to me when I was at this United Nations event, which really struck me, was that the biggest challenge we'll face is what Professor Ding shared. Somebody's going to have a quantum computer hidden in their basement. And the reason why they'll do that is because quantum computing is going to be unequally distributed. It is a physics problem, and not every country can solve that physics problem. Not every country can afford the infrastructure required to set up their own quantum computer. And given that it will be unequally distributed, that unequal distribution will inevitably exacerbate geopolitical power dynamics. So I'm now stepping back and framing the importance of our solution in the context of global dynamics. This is an International Cyber Week. all of the conversations here have that geopolitical dimension. There will be countries that are first mover in quantum computing. What will they do with that power? Who is funding the research in most of the countries in quantum computing? It tends to be defense organizations. And while I'm sure many of the defense organizations also want to cure cancer and find new food sources, the first use case is probably going to be what you all suspect it to be. So the importance of preparing organizations, and more importantly, the entire internet infrastructure, everything that we use to communicate, transact with each other, and to move together, untie this kind of Gordian knot that's all kind of tangled up, is critical. It is a global warming challenge. It is one where we are ahead of the game still, but we need to start taking small, practical, concrete steps, whether it's working with solution providers that already have it baked in, like Signal, Cloudflare, and the rest, or whether it's implementing it in our own organization and starting to take those steps to understand what we need to do. I hope this panel has given you some food for thought. We probably have not answered all of the questions, but we've asked enough questions to get you guys thinking a bit deeper. Please join me once again in giving a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much.
And thank you, panelists, for the insightful discussion. And of course, I would like to invite all our speakers to stay on stage because we are going to be taking a group photo right now. At the same time, I'd like to invite the panelists from the first panel earlier this afternoon, which was on securing trust amidst quantum risks, to join us on stage for this photo as well. So let's have the panelists from the earlier session on stage as well. So everybody just stand a little closer together. So we just want to see the, the lovely branding over there. All right, everybody. Okay, look at the camera. My photographer standing on the chair right over there. Big smiles, 1, 2, 3. One more, big smiles. Last one. Okay, and of course, one more photo. We have some of our organizers on stage as well. Wonderful. Looking absolutely fabulous. All right, let's give the camera a big wide smile. One more. Well done. And of course, to our audience, we want to thank everybody for your active participation and thoughtful questions today. We hope that today's discussion has been informative and enlightening for you. Now, though the panel discussions have ended, we hope that this is only the beginning of more fruitful exchanges and collaborations as we navigate this quantum-safe journey together. Do note that this session will be available on demand on the SICW website, so feel free to revisit this session at your convenience. Now, our next HLP session will be tomorrow at 9 a.m. We will touch on HLP diplomacy session titled, Has the Era of Tech Broken Multilateralism? Thank you so much. Have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.